This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned. We are here to bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. As New York State continues to address the coronavirus pandemic, Disability Rights New York will be recording podcasts specifically targeted at bringing you up-to-date information and resources. And we will do our best to get you information as it changes. If there is a topic that you would like us to address, please comment below or email us at podcast@drny.org. Today, we welcome DRNY staff attorney Jennifer Feeley. She's here to discuss compensatory education during the COVID-19 school closures. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Katrin. Thank you for having me.
So everyone in not only New York State, but also in the country is starting to get back to the school year, whether it's remote or in person right now. However, part of that is going to be addressing the education deficits that we found as schools closed, and there really wasn't a plan for any student. But we're talking about compensatory education today. And can you start by telling us a little bit about what that is and what its relationship to COVID-19 is?
Sure. So let me start by saying, as you were just mentioning, during the school shutdowns because of COVID, many students did not receive instruction for long periods, some not at all. Many students with disabilities have had a really hard time learning from home. And this caused both a reduction in academic instruction as well as their related services. Many students with disabilities were simply unable to access their education virtually for a variety of reasons, including the inability to meaningfully access their education and services due to the nature of their disability, some due to the inability to access the technology necessary to receive the remote instruction, such as a laptop, iPad, the internet or data plan that they may not have had. And many services were reduced, like their related services, while they were being provided virtually. This is where the compensatory education comes up. Compensatory education is a form of legal relief that requires the school district to provide extra services to make up for the services it was required to provide to the student, but did not. The school district can provide the extra services or pay for them in some other way. And the purpose of compensatory education is to place the student in the position that the student would have been in if the student had received the required services in the first place. It's a remedy that is awarded to compensate the student for the educational services they did not receive. And compensatory education is awarded on a case-by-case basis. Compensatory services can, but do not have to be exactly equal to the frequency and type of services that were not provided.
And so with that, remote learning is one way that education was addressed during the shutdown and continues to be addressed as we move forward. Talk to us about individualized needs that need to be met with a student with disability. During a regular school year, you would have staff meetings, teacher meetings with parents and students, and their IEPs or individual education plans would have been discussed. How is this process included in compensatory education, and how are we going forward with this school year addressing these needs?
So one thing that's really important to remember is that all learning, whether remote, hybrid, in-person, still needs to be individualized to meet the student's needs. So in order to provide a student with a disability with a free and appropriate public education, or you might hear people say FAPE, school districts must come up with an individualized education program, like you mentioned, the IEP. This requirement to individualize these special education services and supports to meet that student's need has not changed simply because of the school shutdown, because of receiving services remotely. The district still has to comply with the federal law, the IDEA, that requires these services for students with disabilities.
And so as parents are looking forward to their school year and also getting compensatory education for their child, how do they make these requests, and how do they determine whether or not these services are needed or what services are needed for their student?
Sure. So let's start with making a request for compensatory education. Parents should contact the district, school, or the Committee on Special Education to request compensatory education services. All these requests should be made in writing, such as an email, a letter, a note, and a copy of the request should be kept, as well as proof that it's sent. So if you send it via email, you would have the sent email as proof. If you are faxing it, you would want to print out a fax confirmation, just so that there's proof that it was sent and that it was received on the school district's end. Once that happens, the Committee on Special Education should respond and or hold a CSE meeting to discuss the request. But it's worth noting that because a parent made the request doesn't mean that the district will agree to provide it, in which case you have the ability to request for an impartial hearing. Once you do that, you can do that by either retaining and working with an attorney, or parents are able to file that request themselves. In the request, you must be putting a description of the problem and the remedy that you're seeking, so the compensatory education services you're seeking. And then a hearing officer will be assigned to the case and will make a decision after hearing all of the evidence presented at the hearing. Now, how someone can determine what services to request for a student, there's a couple of different things to consider. So one simple way is to compare what your child or what the student was entitled to receive with what they actually received. This is often referred to as the one-for-one or quantitative approach. For example, if a student's IEP says that a student should receive speech therapy for 30 minutes each week, but the school district does not have a speech therapist available for 6 weeks, you might seek 6 30-minute makeup sessions or compensatory sessions of that speech therapy. The other approach is often referred to as the qualitative approach. And so a student may need more than that straight one-to-one service makeup in order to put them in a position that the student should have been in had they received the services, which is what the purpose of compensatory education is. So especially with the closures, remote learning, and larger gaps in instruction and related services, you may want to request updated evaluations of the student in order to get a better sense of where the student is currently functioning as a result of the lost instruction from the closures. Other things that you should be looking at and thinking about is, if you are noting any regression that you've seen in terms of skills, or regression that may be documented by the student's teachers or providers, and additionally, any failure of the student to make progress on their IEP goals.
I think it's fair to say that there's going to be a large number of these requests coming into the counties. And so one of the questions I have about that is there a time frame as to when compensatory education can be provided? Is there a certain deadline? Is there a time that parents should expect that this should be taken care of?
So if parents aren't receiving a response from the district, they should certainly be following up. In general, if it needs to rise to the level of requesting an impartial hearing, there is a statute of limitations with respect to impartial hearings, and that's 2 years from the date that you knew or should have known about the disagreement. So that's something else that parents should be considering.
And so as far as parents are concerned and any resources that are available to them, this is a very large topic, and certainly there's a lot of conflicting information that is being put out on compensatory education and education as a whole as we still move through this pandemic in New York State, throughout the country. Talk to us about what resources are available for people who may have more questions about this.
So specifically here at Disability Rights New York, we have a guide with respect to compensatory education during the COVID-19 or the coronavirus school closures. In that guide, there is information about a lot of what we just discussed, also websites and links to other outside sources and information.
Jennifer, thank you so much for all that information. I'm sure our audience members will be interested in seeing our guide. We will list those resources you spoke about below in the description of our podcast. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you for having me.
Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org or comment below. Tune in next Wednesday, where we'll bring you more information on disability rights in the state of New York. The closed captioned and ASL version of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel. To listen to more Empire State of Rights closed captioned, follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.